Okay, so let me ask you something. What would you do if you could become invisible? It's a fun question, right? But for one scientist in a classic H.G. Wells story, it became a complete and utter nightmare. Today, we're going to dive into the chaos that happens when a mind-blowing discovery falls into the hands of a man with zero conscience.
So picture this. We're on a street in London, and a couple of young boys see something that just doesn't make any sense. There are fresh, muddy footprints appearing on the steps of a house, but there are no feet making them. The strangest part? There is absolutely nobody there. And as they're just staring, completely confused, another footprint appears. And then another, like a ghost walking down the steps and into the street. The boys, totally fascinated, start following this invisible trail until the muddy tracks just vanish. What in the world could be going on?
Well, the answer is as simple as it is totally unbelievable. Those kids were tailing a scientist who had just made one of the most incredible and, as we're about to find out, one of the most dangerous discoveries you could possibly imagine. He had figured out how to make himself completely invisible.
So who is this invisible man leaving a trail all over London? Let's get into it and meet the guy at the center of this whole mystery, a brilliant scientist named Griffin. Griffin was absolutely obsessed. He ran experiment after experiment, trying to crack the code of invisibility. And you know what? He actually did it. By swallowing some kind of cocktail of rare drugs, he made his body become as see-through as a pane of glass. But here's the catch. It was also just as solid. And this right here is where the story really gets good. There's no doubt Griffin is a genius, but his scientific mind is paired with a total lack of a moral compass. To put it simply, this guy does not care about the law at all. You'd think being invisible would be amazing, but the downside hits him immediately. To get back at his landlord, Griffin sets the guy's house on fire. But to get away without being seen, he's got to ditch all his clothes. And just like that, his great scientific triumph turns him into a homeless, broke wanderer. He's completely invisible, sure, but he's also completely exposed. So this new power of his just leads to one desperate, chaotic situation after another. Griffin is now a fugitive in London, and even though he has this incredible ability, he's still facing some very normal, very human problems. And talk about bad timing. He could not have picked a worse time of year for this grand escape. It is the dead of winter in London, and the air is just brutally cold. Yeah, he's invisible, but he's also naked and absolutely freezing. He's in a really bad spot. So desperate for warmth, he slips into a big department store right after it closes. He helps himself to some warm clothes, grabs a meal, and even crashes for the night on a pile of quilts. But rookie mistake, he oversleeps. When the employees show up the next morning, he has to make a run for it, which means tearing off all his new clothes to go invisible again. And just like that, he's right back at square one. Griffin starts to realize he needs more than just clothes. He needs a way to hide the fact that there's, nothing there above his shoulders. So he finds a theatrical shop on Drury Lane and raids it for the perfect disguise to make himself look like a whole person again. But this is Griffin we're talking about. He doesn't just steal the stuff. He shows his true colors by viciously attacking the shopkeeper from behind and robbing him of all his money. You can already see how quickly he's becoming a violent criminal. So now, Griffin is desperate to get out of the crowded city. He hops a train to the quiet little village of Iping, hoping to just be left alone to work. But his arrival pretty much does the exact opposite. That's what he tells the innkeeper's wife, Mrs. Hall. But come on, think about it. A total stranger shows up in the middle of winter, wrapped head to toe in bandages, and he's super irritable. It's more than a little weird, and you can bet the whole village starts gossiping immediately. Now, Mrs. Hall is willing to put up with this odd guest, mostly because he paid her in advance. But when his stolen money starts to run out, that's when a couple of really strange things start to happen in this quiet village. So, early one morning, the local clergyman and his wife hear noises downstairs. Sounds like someone stealing their housekeeping money. They burst into the room and nothing. It's totally empty. The money's gone, but there's not a soul in sight. All the clergyman can say is, extraordinary affair. And then things get even weirder back at the inn. Mrs. Hall finds Griffin's room is empty. His bandages and clothes are just lying everywhere. And then, all of a sudden, the furniture seems to come to life.
A hat flies off the bedpost and hits her in the face, and a chair literally charges at her and her husband, pushing them out of the room before the door slams shut. So at first, the villagers are terrified. They're whispering about ghosts, maybe even witchcraft. But then, news of the clergyman's robbery gets around. And when Griffin, who just claimed to be broke, suddenly has cash to pay his bill, well, people start putting two and two together. All eyes are on the strange, bandaged man at the inn. Okay, this all leads up to the story's big climax. The villagers, now with the town constable, have had enough. They decide it's time to confront this weird scientist. But what they're about to see is something none of them could have ever have prepared for. When Mrs. Hall demands to know how he got into a locked room, Griffin, who's always had a really short temper, finally just snaps. He yells, "You don't understand who or what I am. Very well, I'll show you." He is done hiding his impossible secret. And then, bam! In a flash, he does it. He starts tearing off the disguise. The bandages, the fake nose, the whiskers, it all comes off. And the poor, horrified people in that bar find themselves staring at a man with no head. It's total chaos. The village constable, Mr. Jaffers, shows up to do his job, but he's facing an impossible task. I mean, how are you supposed to arrest a guy who's not only headless, but is becoming more and more invisible every second as he throws off the rest of his clothes? So, in the middle of all this pandemonium, Griffin escapes. He knocks the constables out cold and just disappears, leaving behind a terrified village and a very powerful, very important lesson. Griffin's story is the ultimate cautionary tale, isn't it? He pulled off a scientific miracle, a discovery that could have changed everything. But because he had no conscience, no sense of right and wrong, his amazing gift became a curse that turned him into a hunted animal. And it leaves us with a really big question. What's the point of a brilliant discovery if it isn't guided by humanity?